Good evening. In a week that shook the Middle East and cracked the American right, Donald Trump stands at two critical crossroads. One front, he dangles a final diplomatic offer before a battered Tehran, knowing the decision could avert a war or unleash one. On the other, he takes aim at the very legal movement that helped build his power, nominating a furiously loyal former defense attorney to the federal bench and triggering what some call a conservative civil war. In this episode, we examine two battles shaping the global order and America's institutions. First, Trump's Iran gambit. Can a face-saving deal stop a nuclear cascade and prevent a regional inferno? Second, Trump vis-a-vis the Federalist Society. Is Bob's nomination a bold shake-up or a reckless act of judicial capture? I'm Mona Mosalhi, and this is In Focus. As Israeli jets retreat from the skies above Iran, the world awaits, not on Tel Aviv, but on Washington. President Trump, fresh from encouraging Israel's preemptive strikes, now finds himself holding the next move. With Iran's regime battered and its nuclear program wounded but alive, Trump is reportedly offering a 2-week window for diplomacy, a face-saving deal with high-stakes implications. Financial Times columnist Richard Haas compares this moment to Ayatollah Khomeini's 1988 poison cup decision to end the Iran-Iraq war. The Supreme Leader Khomeini do the same to preserve the Republic. But this isn't 1988. Israel lacks the military tools to finish the job, and a U.S. strike on Iran's Fordow site could backfire, catastrophically provoking attacks on U.S. bases, surging oil prices, and demolishing global norms on preemptive war. Gulf states plead for de-escalation. Europe eyes a final Geneva breakthrough, but Tehran remains defiant. So is Trump walking into war or walking Iran off a ledge? Joining us now is Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center in Washington. Good evening to you, sir. And let me here start by asking you, President Trump appears to be offering Iran a brief window of diplomacy. What's really motivating this sudden shift?
Well, good evening, Mona. What's motivating is the fact that Donald Trump has kind of painted himself into a corner. We got to go back to 2024 that Donald Trump ran on being the great deal maker, and he's touted his ability to make deals with everybody. And you know, the bottom line here is that he through his envoy Steve Witkoff was actually working in good faith to come up with a possible diplomatic solution prior to 8 days ago, when Israel decided to launch a preemptive strike. So Donald Trump's now in this corner of, when originally these strikes happened 8 days ago, the message from the U.S. was we were never directly involved. That was the message from Secretary of State Rubio. And now we're seeing a completely different tune, to the point where Donald Trump has put a countdown clock on the possibility of U.S. involvement in a war that, quite frankly, no one here in the United States or any of our allies want, or quite frankly needs.
Mm-hmm. Now, what could be the strategic and the global risks of U.S. strike on Fordow facility from your point of view?
Well, the global risk, Mona, is quite simple. I mean, you know, if the U.S. gets involved, and again, let's be clear about this. The reason why Israel wants this, the reason why Bibi Netanyahu wants to drag the U.S. in, is because the U.S. has the only arsenal of weapons that can strike at the heart of the enrichment programs and the heart of the nuclear weapons program, such as the site that you mentioned at Fedor, uh, they need bunker busters. They need MOABs. We have them. Israel does not. So that kind of lends itself to credibility, or that kind of lends itself for the reasoning why Netanyahu and the IDF would like to see the U.S. get drawn into this. However, the big impact of this is strategically, does this really stop the Iranian nuclear program? Every nuclear scientist and every geopolitical expert on proliferation that I've talked to through our center has said that this does not offer any opportunity for them. All this does is just hesitate, or all this does is just stall the program. It does not end the program. So that's one of the things that they have to look at. The other strategic thing is what is Bibi Netanyahu's end game? Is Bibi Netanyahu looking to do this to stop the nuclear program, to destroy the nuclear program in Iran? Or is he doing this for regime change? If he's doing it for regime change,
Good point.
they're going about this the wrong way, as we've seen in the demonstrations in Tehran.
It's a good point you raised here, sir. Is Iran's leadership truly weakened enough to accept a humiliating agreement from your point of view, and at this stage?
Well, you brought up, you brought up the poison pill back in the 80s, Iran-Iraq war. And the reality is, as you pointed out, rightfully so, in your opening, this is not the 80s. This is a completely different geopolitical scene that we're dealing with. Is it weakened? Perhaps. But define weakened. Have they
exactly
weakened the command
define
structure?
weakened?
Well, that's the thing is, and that's what everybody's trying to analyze right now, has of the protests that we've seen as late as this morning in Tehran, opposing Israel and getting behind the government and telling the government we need to stand firm. Is it, is this a matter of, are they weakened because of the fact that Israel and Mossad did strategic hits on their leadership? For example, the entire leadership of the Republican Guard Corps, is that weakened? Possibly, but then all they did was just ascend their deputies into positions of leadership. What we have weakened is the command and control. What we have weakened, when I say Israel has weakened the command and control system. Israel has made the Israeli people, the Iranian people, kind of a little bit in shock because of the attacks. But it has not deterred the support and the nationalism that we're seeing in Iran for Iran standing strong.
But here, when we speak about strikes, then if Israel was able to strike some of the very strategic points, also Iran was able to strike very, very strategic ones. And we're speaking just about today, where it hit the Beersheba facilities and the Silicon Valley of Israel. And that was a very precise hit. So exactly this is why I was asking you to define weakened. Now,
well,
yes.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mona.
Now, how would such a deal look practically and symbolically to both sides, or what, or in which way can it be?
Well, if I can, Mona, for a second, I want to go back and touch on the point that you started the question with, is define weaken. There's some weakness on both sides. One, what we saw, we talked about the weakness in Iran. What we have to look at now is the possible, breaks in the armor in Israel. When we talk about Iron Dome, we see the pictures over Tel Aviv. What we've seen the shift from targeting in Tel Aviv to places like Haifa. And they are getting through. The reports that we've seen is that they launched in this latest salvo about 25 ballistic missiles. If 5 got through, that is a much larger percentage than we've seen before get in through Iron Dome. Does this mean that they may have they may have just used all of their capabilities and they're going to have to rebuild and re-up those capabilities quickly? That's a big concern. Going back to your second point on the question is, what does the deal look like? Look, the deal is simple. It was simple in JCPOA, and it's not going to be any different now. Iran has to stop and swear off any possible proliferation or even the possibility of the proliferation of nuclear weapons.
No.
Period. End sentence.
That question is again, or should again be raised. Yes, Iran has to do that, but also Israel, because both sides, they have the nuclear abilities, but nobody is addressing the nuclear capabilities of Israel as they are doing to Iran. So how do you see that, and what do you have on that?
Well, Mona, this is tough. This is a tough line that the world is walking right now regarding this. I've had a couple of colleagues in other policy areas look at it and tell me, look, the reason why there hasn't been a complete meltdown of relations or of diplomatic ties, or a complete and total breakout of full-scale war between Pakistan and India, is because of the fact that they both have nuclear capabilities and there's a mutually assured destruction capability there. I've heard some even say that maybe Iran having it wouldn't be a bad idea because, again, Israel has it, Iran has it, mutually assured destruction possibly, but then that sets a domino effect of, well, if the Iranians have it, then all of a sudden we see the Saudis going, well, we want it too. And then all of a sudden we see
it means not just the Saudis, but all the whole region would do.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole region would hope for that if this very particular matter is not addressed. If I may ask you the last question in this segment, if diplomacy fails, now how close are we to a full-scale war, and who would bear the costs?
Wow, that is a magnificent question, and I don't think anybody really has the answer. We just saw the Security Council in emergency session, and we heard a lot of our NATO allies, including France, the UK, Germany, talk about, cooler heads need to prevail here. There has to be something that says this has got to end. We got to come to a diplomatic solution. My hope is that we can go back to the table. We can have both parties work in good faith, that both parties will be somewhat transparent about the end result. But that's the hope. Is it real? Only Tehran and Washington can answer that right now.
And the United States.
Yeah.
And
to the last point, though, is who pays for it? Ultimately, the entire world pays for it. If we get into a full-scale regional war, this includes the Suez Canal. This includes the Straits of Hormuz. Those are two vital economic pipelines to the entire globe, which is now interconnected economically. You shut even one of those down because of conflict, you're going to see an economic ripple effect that is going to take a long time to recover from, and that's what's got me big concern.
Right, indeed. Mr. Rosser, we thank you so much for the sharp insights at this moment when diplomacy, deterrence, and dangers collide, from Tehran's nuclear brinkmanship to Washington's judicial upheaval. One thread binds today's crisis, the consolidation of power under Trump, whether reshaping the Middle East or the federal bench. The former president isn't just playing hardball, he is rewriting the rules. Mr. Rosser, please stay with us.
Donald Trump is his name. unlikely, impossible is now reality.
America powerful. We will win, win, win. And we will make America great again. We will very quickly make America great again.
Now, if Trump's foreign policy is teetering on war, his domestic agenda is quietly detonating a revolution within the American right. Trump's nomination of Emil Bov to U.S. Court of Appeals is not just another judicial pick, it's a loyalty test. Once dependent on the conservative Federalist Society to shape the judiciary, Trump has now turned on them. He's called their leadership sleazebacks, accusing them of sabotage in their place. He is elevating loyalists like Bov, his former defense attorney, now DOJ enforcer, despite a no appellate experience and a record many legal experts call politicized. Critics say Bov's nomination exposes a shift from constitutionalism to cult loyalty, weaponizing justice not to uphold the law but to protect Trump's power. Supporters say Bov will end the weaponization of the DOJ, but dissent is growing even from within the conservative movement. As the Senate weighs Bov's confirmation, the stakes are clear. Will the court be neutral arbiters or instruments of executive powers? Now, we are welcoming Mr. Peter Roth, contributing writer at Newsweek and seasoned political commentators. We thank you so much for being with us. And let me start by asking you, what does Emil Bov's nomination signal about Trump's approach to judicial power in his second term?
It's not uncommon for presidents to nominate lawyers that they know personally to important positions on the bench or in the administration. Ronald Reagan chose his personal attorney, William French Smith, as his first attorney general, and he did an excellent job. Lyndon Johnson appointed his friend Abe Fortas to be Chief Justice. That didn't work out so well. Franklin Roosevelt was very close to Felix Frankfurter. Harry Truman was close to Fred Vinson, Chief Justice. So this is not unusual, and I don't pay much attention to the criticism.
No, it's just the timing. We're speaking about the timing here and the situation.
The vacancy exists. You can only appoint somebody to the bench when there's a vacancy. The vacancy exists. This is not unusual. But here's where the underlying challenge exists. The Federalist Society, of which I am not a member because I'm not an attorney, has for a long time sought to elevate originalist thinkers to the federal bench. What they mean by originalist thinkers is that people who look at the Constitution and believe that it says what it means and it means what it says. That the purpose of a judge is not to look into the Constitution and pull out new concepts and new ideas, because the Constitution is, as Justice William O. Douglas and others famously say, a living, breathing document that has to grow with the country. The founders gave us an amendment process to change the Constitution. They didn't expect judges to do it. Now, what some of President Trump's allies want are federal judges who are going to do the same thing that so many liberal judges that we have for decades, conservatives have for decades criticized, that they will issue rulings based on outcomes, not based on what the Constitution says about the power of the executive or about the federal role in education or privacy or the power of the president to lead the military as commander-in-chief, or the fact that all revenue bills have to originate in the House of Representatives. There are those of us who think that, win or lose, that the most important thing is to say, look to the Constitution, and if the Constitution says okay, then you rubber stamp it. And if the Constitution says no, then you overturn it. And if you don't like that outcome, change the Constitution.
Why, from your point of view, Mr. Roth, Trump has turned on the Federalist Society, his former allies, in reshaping the bench?
I think that part of this is personality. I think that the people who nominally are in charge of the Federalist Society today went out of their way to overstate their role in reshaping the federal bench. President Trump is in charge of his administration. He will be the first one to tell you that. He doesn't like it when other people try to get out in front of him and say, well, if it weren't for me or if it weren't for us, Trump wouldn't have done this. That's a non-starter with Trump. That will get you isolated. That will get you tossed into the punishment pit. That will get you in the corner sitting with a dunce cap on your head. And I think there's a valid criticism that Leonard Leo and some of the other people who promote the Federalist Society got out in front, claiming credit for Trump's judicial nominations in a way that the president felt eclipsed his role in picking constitutionalist judges to serve on the Supreme Court and on the appellate courts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, critics, if I may take some of their they say that Bob's DOJ record is politically driven. So are those concerns valid?
Well, the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. It's different from the judicial branch, which is separate and independent and is actually run by Chief Justice John Roberts. There is an element of politicization in every Department of Justice because each president has different priorities. And it is part of the Justice Department's responsibility. It is part of the Attorney General's responsibility to focus on whatever the president says ought to be focused on. That's accountability.
Mm-hmm. Now, could this nomination reshape the balance of the courts, perhaps even pave the way to the Supreme Court?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure what role that actually plays, what role discrimination plays in the selection of nominees. I like to think that we're past that. The president has picked men, he's picked women, he's picked Asians, he's picked Hispanics, he's picked African Americans. I mean, I honestly don't think that when Donald Trump looks at people, he sees color or gender the way people argue that he does. I think that you see that more often from the left, for whom gender and color and ethnic origin are more important than qualifications and merit and intellect. That's how you got some of the stellar appointments you got out of Joe Biden. What we're really talking about here, when getting back to the Justice Department, though, is that the Justice Department is pursuing the president's priorities. One of his priorities is cleaning up the FBI. I think that's frankly long overdue. I think that the FBI has vastly overreached in its activities. That they've focused on people that they want to go after and have found reasons to go after them. Right. That's the reverse of what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to have a reason and then institute an investigation to pick a person and then to look for the crime is to do what Lavrenti Beria, who ran KGB for, or it was, as it was then called, the NKVD for Joseph Stalin, said, find me the man, I'll find his crime. That's the reverse of the American system. And, you know, there were certain things that President Biden determined the Justice Department should be focused on that President Trump doesn't think are a priority. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why we have elections.
Right, but we have to wait to see if that paves the way for the Supreme Court or what will be the case. And then we thank you so much, Mr. Peter Roth, for helping us navigate the growing tensions between the movement, conservatism, and Trump-style governance. And as Trump redraws the map of American power, both abroad and at home, the stakes have never been higher. From Tehran's fragile response to Washington's judicial reckoning, this moment reveals not only a battle for dominance, but a deeper crisis of principles and restraints. Whether it's diplomacy that averts a war or loyalty that reshapes the law, the consequences will echo far beyond the headlines. And I guess that takes us for the end of this episode of In Focus. Many thanks for watching, and until next time, stay informed.